This essential guide will help you develop critical thinking skills crucial for effective decision-making and problem-solving, vital for personal and professional success. Learn to identify and overcome biases, challenge assumptions, engage with diverse perspectives, and build mental resilience. Critical Thinking: How to Outsmart 95% of People and Win Big is not just another self-help audiobook. It's your personal toolkit for thinking sharper, acting smarter, and making better life choices. In a world overwhelmed by noise, misinformation, and emotional manipulation, clear thinking is your ultimate edge. This audiobook breaks down powerful mental models and practical strategies used by top performers, successful entrepreneurs, and high-level decision-makers. Perfect for students, professionals, and anyone seeking self-improvement, this book empowers you to achieve your goals and thrive in all areas of life. Whether you're navigating personal challenges, professional dilemmas, or everyday decisions, the tools inside will help you cut through confusion and take decisive action with confidence. Listen with intention, reflect deeply, apply what you learn. By the end, you'll not only think differently, you'll think better. And that single skill could change everything. Chapter 1. Mastering the Foundations of Critical Thinking. The Core Habits of Highly Analytical Thinkers. Most people go through life reacting instead of reflecting. They hear something and believe it, see something and accept it, feel something and assume it's true. But highly analytical thinkers? They live differently. They question, they pause, they probe. It's like their minds are trained to slow down the rush of information and ask, wait, does this actually make sense? It's not about being smarter than everyone else. It's about thinking deeper, not louder. Analytical thinkers have this quiet strength. They don't jump to conclusions. They observe. They notice the patterns behind people's words, the motives tucked behind actions, the subtle contradictions that others completely miss. And it's not because they were born that way. No one comes into this world analyzing arguments and spotting fallacies like Sherlock Holmes. It's built through habit, curiosity, and sometimes hard experience. Let's say someone tells them, you shouldn't trust that brand. Everyone online says it's a scam. A typical response might be, oh wow, okay, I'll avoid it. But the analytical thinker pauses. They ask, everyone? Who exactly? Where's the data? Is this opinion or fact? This tiny moment of questioning is powerful. It's what protects them from misinformation and impulsive choices. They don't let crowd mentality think for them. And no, they're not cold or emotionless. Actually, they care so much about truth and clarity that they're willing to sit with discomfort just to get to the real answer. That takes courage. It's easier to nod along with the majority. Much harder to say, I don't know yet. Let me look deeper. One of the most fascinating habits they practice is reflective journaling. Sounds boring? Not the way they do it. They don't just write about what happened during the day. They write about why they reacted a certain way, what assumptions they made, what other explanations might exist. Over time, this habit transforms the way they interact with the world. They become less reactive, more intentional. Instead of being ruled by quick judgments, they become masters of thoughtful response. Another beautiful thing, they're not afraid to be wrong. That's a hard one for most of us. But analytical thinkers actually welcome being proven wrong, because it means they're one step closer to understanding. They don't tie their ego to their opinions. They tie it to how well they've thought things through. That mindset? It's liberating. It means you don't have to pretend to know it all. You just need to be relentlessly curious and willing to dig. And here's the kicker. Analytical thinkers don't need to be loud or forceful to be influential. In fact, their calm logic often cuts through noise like a razor. People listen when someone speaks with clarity and purpose, not drama. That's the edge you start to develop when you adopt these core habits. People begin to trust your judgment, not because you always agree, but because they can see you've actually thought it through. So as we move forward, keep this picture in mind. This isn't about becoming robotic or overly cautious. It's about gaining a rare kind of power, the power to pause, analyze, and choose your direction instead of being dragged by the current. The next time you feel the urge to react fast, remember, the smartest minds often move the slowest at first, but when they do move, they're unstoppable. And that's just the beginning. Next, we'll explore how to train your brain to think smarter, not harder. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned! How to train your brain to think smarter, not harder. There's a moment when you realize that thinking harder isn't getting you anywhere. You're grinding through problems, overanalyzing every detail, stuck in mental loops, and somehow still not arriving at better answers. It's frustrating, like trying to untangle headphones in the dark. You're working, but you're not really getting clarity. The truth is, smarter thinking isn't about squeezing your brain harder. It's about changing how you think altogether. Think of your brain like a muscle. It doesn't grow stronger just by lifting heavier weights. It grows when you learn how to lift the right way. Same with your mind. Smart thinkers don't just think more, they think better. They use strategies that actually work. And the beautiful part? These strategies aren't locked away in elite institutions. You can train your brain to think smarter, starting today, in the real world, with real decisions. It begins with simplifying. Most people try to solve problems by adding more. More information, more opinions, more options. But analytical minds? They start by subtracting. They strip things down to their essentials. What's really going on here? What actually matters? That one shift, from complexity to clarity, saves them hours of mental stress. Imagine getting an overwhelming email full of numbers, ideas, and conflicting instructions. Most people panic and try to address every point. But a smart thinker looks at the whole message and asks, what is the sender actually trying to get me to decide? That's a powerful shortcut, because now you're not reacting to chaos, you're zooming in on purpose. Another way smart thinkers train their minds is through pattern recognition. That sounds technical, but it's actually rooted in something deeply human. Storytelling. When you start seeing the world in terms of cause and effect, motivation and consequence, you begin spotting familiar storylines. It's like you've read this plot before: the too good to be true offer, the pressure tactic disguised as urgency, the manipulation masked as logic. When your brain learns these patterns, you don't get fooled so easily. You anticipate, decode, and choose better. And maybe the most underrated mental upgrade? Learning to pause. That micro moment between stimulus and response, that's where smarter thinking lives. Someone says something insulting. The old brain flares up, gets defensive, maybe lashes out. But the trained mind, it pauses. It doesn't suppress the emotion. It studies it. Why did that hit me so hard? What's their goal here? Do I need to respond or just understand? In that pause, you gain something most people never do. Control, not just of your words, but of your direction. Training your brain also means being intentional with what you feed it. Garbage in, garbage out. It's that simple. When you constantly consume sensational headlines, low-effort opinions, and shallow entertainment, your brain becomes wired for distraction, not discernment. But feed it well. Challenging ideas, diverse perspectives, meaningful conversations, and watch what happens. Your thoughts sharpen, your questions get deeper. You start seeing connections that others miss completely. What's amazing is that this doesn't take massive effort, just small shifts practiced often. Asking why more often than what. Writing down your thoughts to see them clearly. Giving your brain space to breathe before making decisions. Thinking smarter is less about IQ and more about mental discipline, the quiet kind that happens when no one's watching. And maybe that's the most hopeful part. Anyone can do this. You don't need a genius gene or a philosophy degree. You just need a willingness to unlearn some old habits and choose curiosity over autopilot. Bit by bit, you start noticing things. You start solving problems faster. You stop second-guessing yourself and start making choices with clarity. That's the moment you stop surviving the mental chaos and start leading it. And just when you think you've mastered one level of thinking, something surprising happens. Your brain shows you a new one. Because the smarter you train it to think, the more powerful it becomes. In the next chapter, we'll explore spotting logical fallacies before they fool you. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned! Chapter 2. Spotting logical fallacies before they fool you. Common thinking errors that sabotage smart decisions. We all like to believe we're making rational choices, that we're weighing the facts, thinking it through, and arriving at the best possible conclusion. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Most of our smart decisions are quietly being hijacked by hidden mental shortcuts, biases, and thinking errors we don't even realize are running the show. It's like your brain has a back door, and sneaky little programs keep slipping in, rewriting your logic without asking for permission. The worst part? These thinking errors feel completely natural. They disguise themselves as gut feelings, confidence, or even common sense. But left unchecked, they'll lead you down paths that feel right until they blow up in your face. Let's talk about one of the most common traps: confirmation bias. This is the brain's annoying tendency to look for evidence that supports what you already believe. while ignoring or discounting anything that challenges it. It's like your mind becomes a lawyer instead of a detective. It's not looking for the truth. It's building a case to defend your existing opinion. So instead of learning something new, you stay stuck in the echo chamber of your own assumptions. And it happens everywhere. You think someone is unreliable? Suddenly, every little delay or mistake becomes proof. You believe your idea will work? You dismiss any warning signs because they don't feel right. And it's not because you're stupid, it's because your brain wants to be right more than it wants to be wise. That's a dangerous trade-off. Then there's the sunk cost fallacy. This one is sneaky. It whispers, you've already put so much time, money, or energy into this, you can't quit now. So you keep chasing a failing project, staying in a one-sided relationship, or clinging to a bad investment, not because it makes sense, but because it hurts to let go. The truth is, the past is paid for, but when thinking gets cloudy, we keep trying to fix the past with more of our future. Or think about emotional reasoning. Your brain tells you, I feel anxious, so something must be wrong, or I feel confident, so I must be right. But feelings aren't facts, they're signals. They deserve attention, yes, but not blind obedience. Emotions can be useful guides, but when they drive the whole car, we crash into decisions that are all instinct, no insight. Let's not forget the halo effect, where one positive trait blinds you to flaws. That charismatic leader, maybe not as trustworthy as they seem. That brand you love, maybe not as ethical as you think. Or the reverse, the horn effect, where one flaw makes you ignore everything good about someone. We do this with people, products, and even ourselves, and it clouds our vision in ways that feel justified but aren't. There's also the false dilemma trap. Your brain loves black and white answers because they're easy. It tells you it's either this or that, success or failure, win or lose. But life is rarely either/or. When your thinking is boxed into extremes, you miss all the creative options hiding in the middle. What makes these errors so dangerous isn't just that they exist, it's that we don't notice them. They operate quietly, in the background, shaping our beliefs and behaviors without any red flags. And the smarter you are, the harder it can be to see them. Because intelligence doesn't make you immune to bias. It just gives you better tools to rationalize your errors. But here's the good news. Awareness changes everything. When you start spotting these thinking traps, your brain begins to slow down and ask better questions. Instead of, am I right? You start asking, what am I missing? Instead of proving your point, you start exploring the truth. That shift alone can transform your decision-making, and honestly, your life. So next time you feel certain, pause. Certainty is often the mask thinking errors wear when they're trying to slip by unnoticed. Curiosity is your antidote. And the more curious you become about your own thought process, the more powerful and accurate your decisions will be. And if you're still wondering just how deep these mental rabbit holes go, stay with me. Next, we'll explore how to disarm manipulation with logic and clarity. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned! How to disarm manipulation with logic and clarity. Manipulation doesn't always look like a villain twisting a mustache and plotting in the shadows. Sometimes, it looks like a friend guilt-tripping you for your own good, or a social media post filled with half-truths and emotional hooks that quietly nudge you toward outrage, or a salesperson who keeps you distracted just long enough to make a decision you didn't fully think through. It's subtle, it's polished, and if you're not careful, it slides right past your defenses. But logic, real, practiced logic, can slice through that fog like a spotlight. Here's the thing. Manipulation thrives in confusion. It feeds on your emotions, your quick reactions, your unspoken assumptions. The more rushed or overwhelmed you feel, the easier it is for someone to steer your thinking without you realizing. But when you introduce clarity, when you start slowing down the pace and asking the right questions, it's like flipping the lights on in a room full of smoke. Imagine someone says, if you really cared about me, you'd do this. Sounds simple, emotional, powerful. But watch what happens when you break it down with logic. You pause and ask, why does my care have to be proven in this one specific way? Are there other ways to care? Is this an appeal to emotion rather than a fair request? Just like that, you've taken the emotional bait off the hook. Or maybe someone drops a loaded statistic in a conversation. 90% of people are doing this, so you should too. That sounds convincing until you shine some clarity on it. Where's the data from? Who was studied? Does this apply to my context? When you start asking those kinds of questions, you stop being an easy target. You shift from being influenced to being informed. Here's where it gets really interesting. People who manipulate often count on you being too polite, too rushed, or too unsure to challenge them. They use fast talk, urgency, and emotional pressure to cloud your thinking. But logic isn't loud. It doesn't need to shout. It simply asks questions that can't be ignored. Like, what's really being said here? What's missing from this picture? Does this conclusion actually follow from the facts? These questions may seem small, but they are powerful. They slow the conversation down. They create space to breathe, think, and see clearly. And that's exactly where manipulation loses its grip. What's even more empowering is that you don't need to get into arguments to defend yourself. You don't need to win with aggression. You just stay calm, focused, and curious. Let others spin their web. You're too busy noticing the threads. And when you start practicing this in your everyday life, everything changes. You stop buying into hype. You stop falling for guilt trips. You stop making rushed decisions you regret. Instead, you become someone who sees through the noise, who doesn't get swept up, who can walk away or speak up without feeling shaken. It's not about being cold or cynical. It's about staying grounded. Logic and clarity don't disconnect you from people. They protect your ability to connect with truth. And when you know how to stay rooted in truth, no one can twist your mind into knots. So the next time something feels off but you can't quite explain why, lean in with logic, get curious, ask quiet questions. Because the moment you stop reacting and start examining, the manipulation starts to unravel, and that's when your clarity becomes your superpower. Stick with me. This skill only gets sharper. In the next chapter, we'll explore breaking free from mental traps. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned. Chapter 3. Breaking free from mental traps. Identifying biases that cloud your judgment. Your brain doesn't like uncertainty. It craves patterns, shortcuts, and fast answers, because that's how it keeps you safe. But here's the kicker. The same system that helps you survive can also quietly sabotage your judgment. Not out of malice, just habit. Biases are like invisible fingerprints on your thoughts, tiny distortions that shift how you see the world without asking your permission. And the wild part? Most of the time, you don't even know they're there. Let's take something simple. Imagine two people walk into a room. One is sharply dressed, walks with confidence. The other is in worn-out clothes, hunched posture. Instantly, your mind starts to draw conclusions. You might think the first one is more successful, more intelligent, even more trustworthy. But stop. Why? What evidence do you really have? That's the halo effect at work. A single positive trait, like appearance or tone, casts a glow over everything else, clouding your ability to see objectively. Now, think about your beliefs, things you're certain about, political views, opinions on success, what makes a person good or bad. Confirmation bias steps in and goes, "Great, let's only notice stuff that proves we're right and ignore the rest." It feels comfortable, even satisfying. But it can trap you in a loop where your world keeps reinforcing itself, and anything unfamiliar starts to look like a threat. Bias doesn't just affect how you view others, it warps how you view yourself too. There's one called the self-serving bias, and oh boy is it tempting. It's the voice in your head that says, "I won because I'm talented, but I failed because of bad luck." See what it did there? It protects your ego by giving you credit when things go well and handing out excuses when they don't. It feels good in the moment. But over time, it blocks growth. Because if nothing is ever your fault, how do you learn? There's also anchoring bias, which is shockingly common. Let's say someone tells you this jacket was originally $500, but now it's just $120. You didn't plan to buy a jacket today, but now $120 seems like a steal. Why? Because your brain latched onto that first number and built its judgment around it. That's the anchor. It works with more than prices. First impressions, headlines, even one-off comments can anchor your thinking before the full picture is clear. And here's one that hits hard: availability bias. It's when your mind assumes that whatever is easiest to recall must be true or common. So if you see 3 news stories about plane crashes, your brain might conclude flying is dangerous, even if it's statistically far safer than driving. This is why fear often wins over facts. The loudest or most vivid memory can override the truth, just because it feels real. Now, none of this means you're broken. It means you're human. We all carry mental blind spots, but recognizing them? That's where real power begins. Because once you see how bias creeps in, you can slow down. You can double-check your assumptions. You can ask yourself, am I reacting or actually reflecting? Am I seeing the full picture or just the parts one like? And it's not about shaming yourself for being biased. It's about learning to dance with your mind instead of being dragged by it. It's choosing curiosity over certainty, awareness over autopilot. And with time, that awareness becomes a skill, a kind of inner compass that helps you step out of the fog and make decisions that are truly yours. So the next time something feels obvious, or your reaction is immediate and intense, pause for a second, zoom out, ask what else might be true. Because the moment you start identifying your biases is the moment your thinking levels up, for good. And the journey gets even more fascinating from here. How to outsmart your own brain in stressful moments. When stress hits, your brain doesn't ask for permission. It takes over. Suddenly, logic steps aside, emotion grabs the wheel, and you're stuck in fight or flight mode, reacting instead of thinking. Your heart races. Your breathing shortens. Every little thing feels urgent, dramatic, bigger than it really is. And even though a part of you knows it's probably not as bad as it seems, your body and brain are already in panic mode. In these moments, your brain isn't trying to ruin your day. It's trying to protect you. That's its job. It sees stress as danger, and it moves fast to keep you safe. But here's where things get tricky. Your brain doesn't always know the difference between real, physical danger and emotional overwhelm. A tough conversation, a big decision, or a critical email can set off the same internal alarm bells as a near car crash. And when that alarm is blaring, it's really hard to think straight. So how do you outsmart your own brain when it's doing exactly what it's wired to do? Start by understanding this simple truth. In stressful moments, your thinking narrows. It's not a flaw, it's survival mode. But narrowing shuts out perspective. You stop seeing the full picture. You zero in on the threat, the mistake, the judgment, and suddenly everything else fades. That email becomes the end of your career. That argument becomes the collapse of your relationship. That moment of doubt becomes evidence you'll never succeed. It's all or nothing. Black or white. But if you can notice that shift, just notice it. You take the first step to getting your power back. It's like being stuck in a mental storm and realizing, okay, this is just weather. It's intense, but it will pass. That awareness alone gives you a little breathing room. And in that room, you can do something incredibly smart. Pause. Not for an hour, not even for 5 minutes. Just long enough to disrupt the default pattern. Take a breath, literally, slow it down, breathe in deep, hold for a few seconds, then exhale slowly. Do it again. This isn't some fluffy wellness trick. It's biological. When you slow your breath, you signal your nervous system to calm down. Your body tells your brain, hey, we're not being chased by a lion. You can stand down. And when your brain stands down, your thinking opens up. Now, once you've created that calm pocket in the chaos, ask yourself one question. What else could be true? That's it. Not what do I feel is true, because feelings and stress are loud and unreliable. Ask what else could be true. This one question breaks the emotional chokehold and makes room for perspective. Let's say you're in a heated conversation and your brain screams, they don't respect me. This is personal. Instead of lashing out or shutting down, pause and ask, what else could be true? Maybe they're projecting their own fear. Maybe they misunderstood you. Maybe they're under pressure too. You don't have to excuse bad behavior, but you do have to see clearly if you want to respond wisely. Another trick? Give your brain a task. When you're spiraling, your thoughts are scattered and chaotic. Anchor them. Focus your attention on something you can control, even if it's tiny. Organize your desk. Write down your thoughts. Stretch, hydrate. It may sound too simple, but it works. It tells your brain, we're not helpless. We're still in control. And that little spark of control can light up your decision-making power again. One of the smartest moves in a stressful moment is to delay action without denying it. Say to yourself, I'll respond, but not right now. That's not weakness, that's wisdom. You're choosing response over reaction. And that choice is what separates impulsive mistakes from intentional moves. It's not about never getting stressed. It's about training your mind to recognize the signs and reroute before the damage is done. Every time you outsmart your brain like this, even in small ways, you're rewiring it. You're building a new habit, one that says, I don't panic when it's hard. I think, I choose, I lead. And that, right there, is how real resilience is born. Not from pretending to be calm all the time, but from learning how to keep thinking even when your world is shaking. The good news? That skill can be practiced, strengthened, mastered. And we're just getting started. In the next chapter, we'll explore fast and clear problem-solving frameworks. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned. Chapter 4. Fast and clear problem-solving frameworks. Proven mental models to untangle complex issues. When life throws a messy, tangled-up problem at you, your first instinct might be to panic or overthink, or worse, try to fix it all at once. That's how most people approach complexity, with frustration and guesswork. But smart thinkers, the kind who make consistently good decisions, don't rely on guesswork. They rely on mental models, these simple but powerful thinking tools that help them cut through the noise and find clarity where most people only see chaos. Think of a mental model as a lens. It's not the answer. It's how you look for the answer. It shapes the way you see problems, ask questions, and find patterns. And the best part? Once you learn a few of these models, you can apply them to almost anything. Work challenges, relationships, finances, even your own personal growth. They give you a calm, structured way to handle the complicated stuff. One of the most useful models is first principles thinking. Instead of trying to copy what's already been done, or making assumptions based on what usually works, this model asks you to strip everything down to its raw components. What are the undeniable facts here? What must be true no matter what? It's like breaking a giant machine into parts, understanding each piece, and then rebuilding it from the ground up with a fresh perspective. Elon Musk is famous for using this model to rethink the cost of building rockets. But you don't need to launch a rocket to use it. You can apply it to budgeting, solving a toxic work situation, or even navigating personal goals. Then there's second-order thinking. This one is gold when you're dealing with decisions that seem good now but might cause trouble later. It forces you to go beyond the surface and ask, and then what? If I take this job just because the pay is better, what happens 6 months from now? If I cut this person off during a disagreement, what happens to our relationship down the line? Most people stop at the first consequence. But second-order thinkers dig deeper, and that's where wisdom lives. Another model that quietly transforms your thinking is inversion. Instead of asking, what should I do to succeed, you flip the question, what would guarantee failure? It sounds odd at first, but it works. If you want to improve your health, ask, what would completely destroy my health? And then avoid those behaviors. This model is brilliant because it removes blind spots. Sometimes it's easier to avoid stupidity than chase genius. And avoiding disaster often leads you straight into success. Then there's Occam's razor, which says, the simplest solution is usually the right one. When things get complicated, people tend to believe the answer must also be complicated. But that's not always true. If your friend stops texting back, it might not be because they're secretly mad, plotting revenge, or testing your loyalty. They might just be busy. This model reminds you not to overcomplicate when a clear, simple explanation is sitting right in front of you. And don't forget, the map is not the territory. It's a powerful reminder that the way you see the world isn't the same as how it actually is. Your mental map, your beliefs, experiences, fears, and preferences can distort reality. Recognizing this helps you step back and ask, what might I be missing? What don't I know yet? It opens your mind, softens your certainty, and makes you a better thinker and listener. These models aren't magic spells. They don't instantly solve problems. What they do is create space, mental space, emotional breathing room. They give your mind something solid to hold on to when everything feels like it's spinning. Instead of being overwhelmed, you start to feel in control, not because the problem is smaller, but because your thinking is sharper. You'll start noticing something else too. People will come to you for clarity. Because while everyone else is reacting with stress and confusion, you're approaching things with curiosity, structure, and calm. And the truth is, that's rare. Most people haven't been taught how to think this way. But once you start using mental models, it's like unlocking a toolkit for better living. So next time you feel stuck, lost in complexity, remember, the smartest minds don't try to outmuscle the problem. They reframe it, they filter it, they think through it. With the right model, even the most tangled problems start to come undone, and we're just beginning to unpack how powerful that really is. Step-by-step systems for rapid, clear thinking. Some days, your mind feels like a browser with 27 tabs open, and one of them is playing music, but you can't find which. Your thoughts are racing, your to-do list is growing, and decisions that should be simple suddenly feel heavy and overwhelming. You try to push through, but the more pressure you feel, the more cluttered your thinking becomes. That's not just mental fatigue, it's a system failure. The truth is, clear thinking doesn't happen by accident. It happens by design. Smart thinkers don't rely on last-minute clarity. They build step-by-step systems that make their thinking faster, cleaner, and more reliable, especially when life feels like chaos. And no, it doesn't require fancy tools or degrees in philosophy. It just requires knowing how to structure your thoughts so you don't drown in them. Let's walk through it. Step 1. Capture everything. When your brain is juggling thoughts, worries, reminders, and half-formed ideas, clarity doesn't stand a chance. So the first step is to unload. Write it all down. Yes, even the messy stuff. Not to fix it right away, but to see it. There's something almost magical about moving thoughts from your mind onto paper or a screen. It frees up mental bandwidth. It tells your brain, we've got this. Nothing's getting lost. Next comes clarify the question. Most people waste time solving the wrong problem. They get stuck because they're answering vague, tangled questions like, why is this happening to me? Or why can't I figure this out? That kind of thinking leads nowhere. Clear thinkers reframe. They zoom in and ask, what exactly am I trying to solve? It's like using a flashlight instead of wandering in the dark. The more precise your question, the sharper your solution. Once the question is clear, it's time to separate facts from feelings. This part is tricky because emotions love to dress up as logic. You might feel like someone is ignoring you, but is that a fact? Or just a fear? You might feel like you're failing, but what do the actual results say? Creating two columns, facts on one side, feelings on the other, can create just enough distance for you to think with balance instead of bias. You're not denying your emotions. You're just making space for logic to speak up too. Then comes generate options. Your brain loves shortcuts, but they're not always smart ones. When you rush into the first solution that pops up, you miss out on better ones that are just a layer deeper. So ask yourself, what are 3 other ways I could approach this? Even if the first answer feels obvious, challenge yourself. Options open up possibility. They dissolve mental traps like, this is the only way, or I have no choice. When you realize you do have options, you shift from stuck to strategic. After that, test your assumptions. This is where thinking gets sharper. Every decision you make is based on some assumption about yourself, other people, or the situation. Ask, what am I assuming here? What if that assumption is wrong? It sounds small, but it's a game changer. Just one faulty assumption can derail your entire decision. But when you catch it, you stay in control. Now, once your thinking is clean and your options are clear, it's time to choose with intention. Don't overthink. Don't aim for perfect. Just ask, which option aligns best with my values, my goals, and the bigger picture? Then commit. Smart thinkers know when to pause for clarity, but they also know when to move forward with confidence. There's power in decisiveness once the groundwork has been laid. And finally, reflect and adjust. This is the step most people skip. After a decision, take a moment to check in. What worked? What didn't? What would I do differently next time? That reflection is where real growth happens. It's what turns one good decision into a lifetime of better ones. These steps aren't rigid rules. They're a flexible framework, something you can apply to nearly any challenge, big or small. The more you practice them, the faster they become second nature. Eventually, when life throws something unexpected at you, you won't spin. You'll pause, structure your thoughts, and respond with clarity. Because when you train your brain to think in systems, chaos doesn't scare you anymore. You don't get lost in the noise. You create calm inside the storm. And that's what gives you the edge, not just to think clearly, but to act wisely when it matters most. Listen to what comes next, because the deeper we go, the sharper your mind becomes. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to analyze arguments like a pro. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned. Chapter 5. How to analyze arguments like a pro. Separating facts from persuasion in everyday debates. Sometimes, what sounds convincing isn't actually true, and what's true doesn't always sound convincing. That's the tricky territory we walk through in everyday debates. Whether you're chatting with a friend about politics, scrolling through a heated Facebook post, or watching a slick presenter on YouTube, you're constantly being pulled between facts and persuasion. And most people, they don't even realize it. They walk into conversations unarmed, letting emotion, tone, and confidence guide their belief systems instead of truth, evidence, or logic. That's where things get dangerous. See, persuasion isn't inherently bad, it's a tool. But it becomes a problem when it disguises itself as fact. Just think about how easy it is to fall for a statement like, "Studies show that 9 out of 10 people agree." It sounds official, doesn't it? Like it's grounded in research. But what studies? Who were the people surveyed? Was it 10 people or 10,000? Suddenly, when you start to peel back the layers, that shiny, persuasive statement begins to crumble. This is where sharp thinking earns its weight in gold. The human brain loves shortcuts. It wants to believe the person who speaks the loudest, or who seems most confident, or who uses words like clearly, obviously, or everyone knows. But facts don't need to shout. They just need to be uncovered, and it takes a calm, curious mind to do that. One of the most powerful things you can learn is to pause when someone makes a strong claim and ask yourself, where's the proof? Not the emotion, not the performance, just the data. Think about your next argument with someone. Let's say it's about health trends. They say something like, everyone's cutting out carbs. It's the healthiest way to live. It sounds convincing. There's passion behind it. Maybe they've got their own personal story to back it up. But here's what separates a critical thinker from the rest. You don't take their word as gospel. You politely press for clarity. What studies support that? Is it healthy for all body types? What do nutritionists say long term? Just like that, you've shifted the terrain of the debate from emotion to evidence. When you're able to separate facts from persuasion, you don't just win arguments, you become someone people respect. Why? Because you're not swayed by volume or flashiness. You listen deeply, question fairly, and form opinions grounded in reason. That kind of thinking is magnetic. It draws in those who want substance over noise. And the best part? Once you start practicing this, it becomes second nature. You begin spotting the subtle shifts in language that try to steer you. You notice when someone is dodging facts and leaning on charm. And when you speak, you bring a clarity that cuts through confusion. You're not just talking louder, you're talking smarter. So the next time you find yourself in a debate, remember this: don't be in a rush to respond. Be in a rush to understand. Ask questions, dig, stay curious. That's the real power, being the one who isn't so easily persuaded, because you're too busy seeking the truth. How to expose hidden agendas and emotional tactics. Sometimes, what someone isn't saying speaks louder than what they are. It's in the pause before they answer. The way they tilt the conversation just enough to make you doubt yourself. That sinking feeling in your stomach that tells you something here doesn't feel right, but you can't quite put your finger on it. That's how hidden agendas and emotional tactics work. They sneak past your logic and aim straight for your instincts. Most people assume manipulation looks obvious, like some slick-talking villain twisting a mustache in a movie. But in real life, it's far more subtle. It's a coworker who always forgets to give you credit, but makes sure to mention how much they value teamwork. It's a politician who tells heart-wrenching stories to stir your emotions, right before slipping in a policy that benefits their donors more than their voters. It's the influencer who makes you feel like you're not doing enough with your life, right before they pitch their course for $997. Here's the uncomfortable truth. When someone wants to influence you, they usually don't lead with logic, they lead with emotion. Why? Because logic makes you think. But emotion makes you act, and if they can make you feel before you think, they can steer the conversation without you even realizing it. That's the game, and the sooner you spot it, the harder you are to manipulate. So what do hidden agendas actually look like? Sometimes they hide behind compliments. You're so talented, I just knew you wouldn't mind picking up the extra work. Sometimes they hide behind guilt. Wow, I just thought we were better friends than that. And sometimes they use fear. Subtle warnings like, only losers miss out on opportunities like this. Or, if you don't act now, you'll regret it forever. See the pattern? They're not trying to reason with you. They're trying to bypass your thinking entirely. The key to exposing these tactics isn't to call people out in a dramatic way. It's to notice the gap between what's being said and what's being done. Pay attention to tone. Pay attention to timing. And most importantly, ask yourself, who benefits if I believe this? Who stands to gain if I react the way they want me to? That single question can crack open a strategy that's been playing in the background the whole time. You'll start to notice how some people inflate their own struggles to pull your sympathy, just enough to lower your guard. Others use urgency, not because something's urgent, but because panic makes people obedient. It's all designed to flood your emotions just long enough to drown out your logic. But the moment you step back and name the tactic for what it is, the spell breaks. You're not cold or cynical for noticing, you're awake. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. That's the beautiful part. You become calmer in conversations, less reactive. You don't get pulled into drama as easily because you're watching the game unfold instead of being played by it. You start listening for what's missing. You start noticing the pressure points, how people push them, when they push them, and why. This isn't about becoming distrustful of everyone. It's about sharpening your filter so you don't get emotionally hijacked. So you don't hand over your attention or your decisions to someone who hasn't earned that power. The world is full of noise, persuasion, and distraction. But the more you train yourself to spot what's underneath, the more clearly you'll see what truly matters. And the best part? You'll trust yourself more, because instead of getting swept up, you'll stand firm, not rude, not cold, just grounded, and fully aware. In the next chapter, we'll explore applying critical thinking in the real world. You won't want to miss it. Stay tuned. Chapter 6. Applying critical thinking in the real world. Tools to make better life, business, and relationship decisions. You know that feeling when your mind is spinning with 100 thoughts, and you just wish someone could hand you a map and say, "Here, this is the best path forward"? Life doesn't work like that. But what if there were tools, real, practical tools, that could clear the fog, slow the chaos, and guide you toward decisions you won't regret later? That's the kind of clarity we all crave, especially when it comes to the big stuff. Your life path, your business moves, your relationships. These aren't decisions you want to make based on mood swings, guilt trips, or guessing games. They shape your future, define your peace, and determine whether you'll be proud or quietly resentful years from now. Let's start simple. One of the most powerful tools is the 10th of October 10 rule. It asks, how will this decision feel 10 minutes from now, 10 months from now, 10 years from now? Sounds basic, right? But it slices right through the noise. That impulsive text you want to send? The job you're about to take just because it pays more? The person you're thinking of giving a second chance even though your gut says don't? When you run those through the 10th of October 10 filter, you begin to see beyond the moment. You step out of the now and into the wiser version of yourself, the one who knows what really matters in the long run. Then there's the regret minimization framework. This one came from Jeff Bezos of all people. It's what he used when deciding to quit his stable Wall Street job to start Amazon. He asked himself, when I'm 80, will I regret not doing this? It sounds like a question only a billionaire could afford to ask. But really, it's for anyone who wants to live without the weight of what-ifs. When you imagine yourself old and looking back, suddenly the noise of opinions fades. The pressure of today's fear shrinks. You're left with clarity, and sometimes, courage. For relationship decisions, whether it's ending one, starting one, or rebuilding something that's breaking, use what's called the love and logic balance. That means stepping back and asking, is this connection built on actual alignment or emotional survival? Do I feel peace here, or do I just feel needed? Am I making this choice from fear of being alone, or from deep respect for what this relationship brings out in me? Too many people confuse comfort with compatibility. And while comfort is nice, compatibility is what makes a relationship last through real storms. Now let's talk business. Entrepreneurs, dreamers, even side hustlers. This one's for you. The Eisenhower matrix is your secret weapon. Divide tasks into 4 categories: urgent and important, important but not urgent, urgent but not important, and neither. It sounds nerdy, but once you map your day like this, you stop confusing busyness with progress. You stop letting other people's fake emergencies steal your focus. You start building instead of reacting. That's when your business actually grows. Still stuck between 2 options? That's where the inversion method works like magic. Instead of asking what to do to succeed, ask what would guarantee failure and avoid those things. Want to make your relationship better? Ask, what would absolutely ruin it? Then don't do that. It's strange how thinking in reverse makes things clearer. It takes away the fluff and shows you what actually counts. But here's something deeper. The most powerful tool you'll ever use isn't a framework. It's honesty. Brutal, beautiful, sometimes uncomfortable honesty with yourself. Not the version you say out loud to make yourself look okay. The real stuff. The part of you that whispers at night, "This isn't what I want," or "I'm playing small," or "I know what I need to do, I'm just scared." That voice? That's your compass. And most of us ignore it until life shakes us hard enough that we can't anymore. So what happens when you start using these tools, stacking them, letting them guide your decisions? You begin to feel lighter, more confident. You stop needing constant advice from 10 different people. You stop overthinking every turn. You trust yourself, not because you're always right, but because you've learned how to think clearly. You begin choosing things that align with who you are, not who you're afraid to disappoint. It's not about making perfect choices. Life's messy. Business is risky. People are complicated. But when you use tools like these, you create momentum. You move with intention, not confusion. You choose not just what looks good today, but what builds the kind of life that feels right years from now. That's not just better decision-making. That's power. The kind that stays with you. Turning clear thinking into winning strategies. Sometimes the most successful people aren't the loudest or the flashiest. They're the quiet ones in the room who are simply thinking a few moves ahead. Not because they're psychic. Not because they have a crystal ball. But because they've trained themselves to turn clear thinking into winning strategies. Consistently. Almost like a second nature. Clear thinking doesn't come from being the smartest in the room. It comes from being the clearest. When you can strip away the noise, the fear, the ego, and the assumptions, weird things start happening. Problems that once seemed overwhelming suddenly reveal patterns. Opportunities start looking less like lucky accidents and more like logical outcomes. And decision-making stops being a gamble and starts feeling like guided precision. Think about a chess player. The amateur gets distracted by every possible piece on the board, reacting emotionally to threats and chasing fast wins. The expert sees structure. They zoom out, calmly scan the whole board, predict 5 steps ahead, not just what they want to do, but how the opponent will likely respond. That's what clear thinking does in real life. It teaches you not to just act, but to anticipate, to position yourself ahead of the curve. Now, what does it take to turn that mental clarity into real-life strategies that win? It starts with being brutally honest about the situation you're in. No sugarcoating, no hoping something will magically fix itself. Clarity is uncomfortable, but it's powerful. Because once you stop lying to yourself, you can start building a real plan. And that's where the magic begins. You zoom in on your goals and then zoom way out to see the full picture. Who are the key players? What's the real timeline? What are the risks people aren't talking about? What small moves today will create massive leverage tomorrow? These questions sharpen your awareness like a blade. They give you the power to step out of emotional reactions and into strategic action. And this isn't just for CEOs or startup founders. You can apply this in a breakup conversation, a job offer negotiation, or even deciding where to invest your time this weekend. The process is the same. Get clear, then act with purpose. The world doesn't always reward the hardest worker. It rewards the person who plays the smartest long game. When you commit to clear thinking, you're no longer just reacting to life. You're orchestrating it. And suddenly, that luck everyone talks about, it starts showing up at your door a lot more often. Let's pause for a moment. Everything we've talked about, mental clarity, strategic thinking, anticipating moves, taking control of your decisions, none of it matters unless you decide to apply it. Right now, in your own life. Clear thinking is not a trick for the gifted. It's a discipline, a commitment, a daily choice. And the truth is, it's not always easy. You're going to be tempted by shortcuts. You'll face pressure from people who want you to react instead of reflect. You'll wrestle with your own emotions, biases, and fears. But the moment you choose clarity over chaos, strategy over scrambling, you start separating yourself from the average thinker. Because here's the secret most people miss. Life isn't about being constantly busy. It's about moving with precision. You don't need 1,000 actions. You need the right one, at the right time. And that only happens when you've trained your mind to slow down, see the angles, and act from a place of calm confidence. You're not just here to survive decisions. You're here to own them in your career, in your relationships, in the way you spend your time, build your habits, and respond to adversity. The real win is becoming the kind of person who doesn't get tossed around by the storm, but becomes the one steering the ship. That's the power of clear thinking turned into strategy. It puts the map in your hands. It gives you a compass when everyone else is panicking in circles. Think of the people you admire most, not the loud ones, but the ones who seem to always make the right moves, the ones who stay grounded when things fall apart, the ones who can say no without guilt and yes without fear. They didn't get there by accident, they practiced this. They took their clarity and built strategies that became their superpower. Now here's the challenge. What's one area of your life that feels foggy right now? One area where you feel like you're reacting instead of leading? Pause and bring it to mind. Now ask yourself, what would this look like if I thought clearly about it? If I removed the emotion, ignored the noise, and looked at it like a strategist, what would I do differently? That's where transformation starts, not in giant leaps, but in small conscious shifts in how you think. The moment you start asking better questions, you get better outcomes, period. So don't leave today with just inspiration. Walk away with intention. Make a decision, right now, that you're done living life on autopilot, done making default choices, done waiting for clarity to magically appear. You're going to create it. You're going to practice it. Because the person who thinks the clearest wins more than just arguments or debates. They win life. They win peace of mind. They win time back. They win freedom. And they become someone who doesn't just respond to the world, they reshape it. That person? That could be you. But only if you choose it. So take a breath, look around at your current situation, and make the silent, powerful decision that most people never will. From this point on, I will think clearly, I will act strategically, and I will win, not by chance, but by choice. You don't need to predict the future. You just need to prepare for it. And it all starts with a clear mind and a bold step forward. Now go, make it count. If this audiobook opened your mind or gave you just one new way to think smarter, drop a comment with your biggest takeaway. I read every single one. Subscribe and turn on notifications for more free, full audiobooks on success, psychology, and high-performance thinking. And if you know someone who could use sharper thinking, sent mail, share this with them now. Remember, the gap between winners and everyone else is how they think. Keep sharpening your mind.